I mean, moves for the lead at least, so there was something to enjoy in that race.
Yeah, we bloody love a move for the lead. And Ben, you've always said it, and I've always echoed what you've said in this point, that, as long as we see a threat of a change or a threat of a move, or we see some close racing, and we got that a lot of the case up and down the field, it's exciting. That's what we want to see. And Portugal appears to be able to deliver that now, year on year, 2 years in a row, and it's been an exciting Grand Prix both times. You're right, it wasn't as breathtaking or as thrilling necessarily as Bahrain or Imola was, but it doesn't mean it was a bad Grand Prix. I was very satisfied with that. As the first 3 Grand Prix go in a season, it's delivered. And we've got a real thriller of a season on our hands, it feels like. Those 2 moves from Hamilton were absolutely gorgeous. That sweeping move around the outside on Bottas was a real kind of assertion of dominance. So, I'm still the number 1 guy here. Not that there's any doubt. And obviously the move down the inside on Max, again, brilliant to see. And then the safety car transition that we had, Hamilton caught out, sleeping. Unusual in a Formula 1 car, but, there it's happened. And Max Verstappen took advantage of that. And I thought then, for a minute, Verstappen's going to catch up to Bottas and get that move done. And that might be game over for Lewis. It kept you guessing. And that's what I like about this kind of Grand Prix. They keep you guessing. I never really knew when that pace is going to drop off, when that pace is going to come back, when we're going to get a move done. And it wasn't just at the front either. And we got to see some of it. Well done, race director. You got a little bit better. We got to see moves on, Ricciardo passing. Alonso decided 3/4 of the way through the Grand Prix that he was going to start making overtakes. I give you a 40-lap head start, everyone. Right, I'm coming. And he did a good job, and it was good to see. And even as far back as Schumacher on Latifi, that was fun to watch. That was a really enjoyable little battle, and I'm glad we actually got to see it take place. So I'm quite happy that we got action all up and down the field. It was not just a top 4 with 10 seconds between them each time, driving around and no action, and then the director doesn't bother to show any midfield. We saw action everywhere. And that's what I want in an F1 race. I want action up and down the field. It doesn't always have to be constant overtakes. It can be close running. It could be an attempt here or there. But we saw it, and that is brilliant. And if these first 3 races are anything to go by, the rest of the season, apart from Catalonia next week, is going to be an absolute treat. So bring it on. I would give it a bit more of a 6.5 out of 10. I'll probably give it a 7.5 out of 10.
I didn't know where that answer was going to end, Sam.
Sorry.
That kept going for ages.
The hiccups had stopped for a moment, so I thought, make the most of it. Keep going.
Get the words in. Get the words in.
Whilst you can. I mean, we're going to get into the various moving parts of this Grand Prix as we go through this podcast, so we will be looking at Bottas's performance, the performance of the Red Bulls, the midfield as well. I'd like to start, though, with the race winner, Lewis Hamilton. Not necessarily something we always necessarily need to see in terms of Lewis Hamilton making 2 overtakes in order to make a win happen. A lot of the time qualifies on pole position and doesn't necessarily need to make the overtakes in order to guarantee the 25 points. So, Harry, what did you make of Hamilton's 2 moves on Verstappen and Bottas respectively, and then his ability to pull away after that?
Yeah, I think Brundle said it in commentary. It was kind of classic Hamilton opportunism.
Yeah, spot on.
Thank you. English. Yeah, he, for the first 5 or 6, 7, 8 laps, he looked kind of like he was hanging on to Bottas and Verstappen. And then as the tyres came towards him, as soon as he got the sniff of an overtake, he just did it, which... we expect it, and it was only because he'd lost out on that safety car restart that he was behind Verstappen, which, as Sam said, was unusual. He's not often caught napping, but it was kind of what you expected, and he didn't pull away massively, but he still had enough of a cushion really for the rest of the race there on in, and it ebbed and flowed. I think the pace. There were times when Max looked quick, there were times when Bottas occasionally looked quick, but they never really troubled Hamilton from there on in. So, he just didn't panic, which we know he wouldn't do, and then got the job done. It was a pretty flawless performance. Well, I say flawless, apart from the safety car restart, but other than that, he was pretty flawless, I think.
What did you make of his performance, Sam?
This is exactly what I've come to expect of Lewis Hamilton, and that's a silly thing to say because I think that kind of performance for most drivers is a little bit, that's what you expect at the very top of their game. That is what you expect when they're on one on today. But this for Lewis Hamilton just felt like he just did what Lewis Hamilton does. He turned up to the event At times, it didn't look like he had the fastest car. He realised what his strengths were in that classic tyre wear that we've come to know him well for in terms of conserving his tyres. He gets up behind his opponents, makes that move clinically well. It was so clean on both occasions. And he got the job done. Lewis Hamilton proving once again why he's the 7-time world champion, and Bottas, for example, isn't the leader of the team, because they've got the same machinery, and Hamilton's there able to pull off moves on both Verstappen and his teammate, while Bottas gets stuck behind both of them and slowly falls further and further back. So, to me, this just once again demonstrates why Lewis is where he is and why other people haven't got to that extent. He also just made it look a bit easy, which is just crazy. I just can't believe how simple he makes 2 different overtakes on the same corner against 2 of the fiercest rivals in the sport. And he's just saying, like, yeah, I'm through. See you later. 2 seconds up the road now. Bye. And that is just so accustomed for Lewis. That's so normal for Lewis Hamilton to do. That's why he's a 7-time world champ. That's why he's leading the championship again. It was an all-round brilliant performance, apart from being caught napping on the safety car restart, which he very quickly made up for. And that's what you need to see. So, yeah, brilliant performance from the champ.
Yeah, I like your thoughts there. Clinical, made the moves when he needed to. And you're right in what you say that there was an element of patience about this, and even with that element of patience, he still had the 2 moves wrapped up with another 46 laps left to go in the Grand Prix. So he somehow managed to be patient with the moves. At the same time, he got everything wrapped up within the first third of the Grand Prix, even with 5 laps on the safety car. So he made pretty quick work of what he needed to do. And this does come back to Mercedes' dominance over the last, well, not just this year, but Mercedes' dominance over the last 7 years or so. In that there are so many occasions where Lewis Hamilton goes on to victory, and you don't necessarily need to see more than him extending a gap after he's claimed pole position. And today we saw something different. Of course, he didn't get pole position on Saturday. It was Bottas, his teammate, who did. He lost that position to Max Verstappen at the safety car restart. So at that point, he needs to make 2 overtakes if he wants to take the win. And to his credit, both of them happened on track as well. You could have maybe got away with doing one of them under the pit stops, like Verstappen was able to get past Bottas. Maybe that could work in his favour. To his credit, like, he didn't need that, and he was able to do both on track at the same time. And when Bottas and Verstappen were battling for P1 and P2, and Hamilton was about 1 second behind or so, you just felt that there was no chance that those 2 were going to race off into the distance, battle for the lead with Hamilton settling for 3rd. You always felt like Hamilton has the opportunity to pick these guys off one after the other, depending on who's able to get in front. Obviously, Bottas was able to keep the lead ahead of Verstappen, and as such, it was Verstappen who was the first target, and Bottas who was the second target. But it's almost like a top Premier League striker kind of thing, where you need to be clinical. Sometimes you only get 2 chances, and you need to make them both count, which is what he did. He had he gave himself an opportunity to overtake Bottas, nailed it at the first time. Had an opportunity to overtake Verstappen, nailed it at the first time. It's that clinical display that we've come to expect from Lewis Hamilton, and there's no element of surprise about it, because even though it is incredibly impressive, it's just something we've become so accustomed to seeing from him. So I think it was an incredibly impressive performance to go from 3rd place at the beginning of the race to 1st place, and to the point where your 2 nearest rivals feel there's no chance of winning, that they can pit to go for the extra point for the bonus point fastest lap. To go from that point to that point, it's pretty impressive. 66 laps work for him. And to focus a little bit more on Valtteri Bottas, because he did claim pole position, something we've seen him do plenty of times. He did have the lead at the beginning of the Grand Prix and has ended up finishing 3rd place. He's gone from lap 19 in the lead to lap 66, taking the fastest lap point, but he's down in 3rd. So, what did you make of his demise in the Grand Prix, I guess you could say, Harry?
First of all, I think that's easily his best performance of the season, which is,
says a lot.
Yeah, no, it's not a great thing, but it's more on the form of Bottas we've become accustomed to, in both senses of the word, that he's really quick, but then can't convert it on a Sunday. yeah, look, it just doesn't work out for him. He's there, isn't he? He's there or thereabouts. But he just can't find. I think he was on Verstappen's pace really, and he got done by the undercut, and obviously had that issue with the engine later on. But I think he's there or thereabouts. He's just not quite got that last little bit of speed or consistency during a race that Verstappen and Hamilton have, and it hurts him every time. Yeah, it was almost like watching the 2020 Portuguese GP. It was almost exactly the same. So yeah, I mean, I guess he can take some heart from the fact it was a better weekend, but look, he just doesn't quite have that last little bit to make it count, which will hurt. But I don't know what else he can really do to rectify that. I think he has to have a race where something goes wrong for Hamilton and Verstappen for him to really capitalise and win. So yeah, I'm sure he won't be very happy about it, but at least it was slightly more encouraging.
Yeah, and I guess silver lining, at least from the team's standpoint, is that if Bottas is being positioned as that second driver versus Perez as Red Bull's second driver, then Bottas did claim 4 more points than Perez did out there today. Sam, I was just looking at Bottas from P1 to P3. What did you make of his good start but not able to capitalise?
Bottas did a great job up until the last 10% of the entire weekend. In practice, he was threatening. He looked the faster of the two drivers. But I think most people will look at a team and go, oh, one driver seems consistently faster than the other the whole way through practice and then gets pole in qualifying. But when your teammate is Lewis Hamilton, it seems like when Lewis is behind Bottas, I can always think, there's a chance here that Lewis is going to go on to achieve something. There is a chance that a move can be made. There's a chance that an overtake will be tried. When Bottas falls behind, we so rarely see Bottas go on the counter, go on the offensive, try and take those positions back. It so rarely comes back the other way that it's almost a bit defeatist. And Harry, you made a very good point a minute ago. You said the line are kind of, it doesn't seem to happen for him. Well, it doesn't seem to happen for him, and it can only not happen for you enough times until you need to kind of look at yourself, your own ability. Bottas is a brilliant driver, but is he a good enough driver to be in that top spot now? Because I think Bottas needs to start more looking over his shoulder rather than looking forward. Hamilton and Verstappen very much seem to be very comfortable. They're in a bit of a league of their own at the moment. They are the two challengers. There's no doubt about it. That poor start from Bottas has already put him at such a disadvantage that I can't really see him mounting a massive challenge against those two again, unless they both DNF for some reason. Perez, on the other hand, is becoming more and more comfortable in that Red Bull. Yes, he claimed more points today than Perez, but that's not to say that Perez, over the time period, will not become more and more comfortable. More tracks might suit that Red Bull, and Perez might be able to maximise that. Again, also behind him currently, Lando Norris. That McLaren is no slouch. I can't believe I'm saying this, the fact that maybe another team, the 5th place driver at the moment, could be the guy to attack Bottas, who is in the car that's currently leading the championship. But I think it's a realistic possibility. There will be certain tracks where I think Norris will have the capability to challenge Bottas if Bottas isn't on his absolute premium come a race weekend. Going from first to third for any driver is never good enough. It once again wasn't good enough for Bottas. If we're going to talk selfishly for Bottas, he is not doing what he needs to do to cement himself as a title challenger, and we're only the 3rd race in. We've got another 20 to go, so he's got time to rectify it, but I did make a bold prediction a little while ago that he won't win another race, and I'm standing by that. I just don't think he's got that grittiness in him at the moment to snatch that victory away from now 2 challenges. It's not just Hamilton, it's Hamilton and Verstappen, 2 different cars, 2 different builds, strengths on either area. I just can't see it happening for Valtteri, unfortunately. And I think this demonstrated it very clearly today.
This might be slightly peculiar because I think I stand up for Valtteri Bottas more than the average person does.
You do. You do.
Is the average person Sam?
Well, if the average person was Sam, then I'd love to know what the critical version of that is. But if we're looking at the first 2 races, Bahrain, I was somewhat understanding. I think when the pace was pretty similar. Once Bottas had clean air, he had pretty similar pace to Verstappen and Hamilton, so I was able to at least cut him a little slack based on that. Imola, not a good performance, obviously, but again, I did offer him a little bit of slack because in the wet, there weren't many overtakes that happened without the DRS. He couldn't get past Stroll. Maybe he should have done, but I don't think it was criminal that he didn't. And actually, what here, you've said Harry is his best performance of the year so far. I'm actually ironically going to be the most critical about him today compared to the first two races, because I really
Harry,
don't think it was a very... I don't think it was a good performance. Firstly, if we're looking at let's look at the two overtakes that happened on him. And, I always say that if there is a driver, or two drivers in this instance, who are constantly within your DRS range and that never stops, your pace probably isn't equivalent to the guys behind, because we know how difficult it is to stay within DRS of the driver in front for laps at a time. We've often seen where the chasing driver will catch up and they'll be behind them for a couple of laps and they can't get past, and they kind of drop back a bit after that point because they just can't maintain that. What we saw today, particularly with Hamilton but also with Verstappen, was that they were just able to stick within 1 second of Valtteri Bottas, which more often than not implies that actually your pace is inferior to the guys behind you, and once they get past, you're not going to be able to stay within the DRS range as they could, and that proved to be true. Once Hamilton got past, I think Bottas had 1 lap of DRS before he was outside the 1 second zone, and after that point, 2, 3, 4 seconds, it was a done deal. Similarly with Verstappen, they were tucked in quite close behind in that first stint. Once Verstappen got past, even with Bottas's slight resurgence in the second half of the race, he still didn't really threaten that position all that much. So, I think once Verstappen and Hamilton, I actually think, had pretty similar pace overall. Once they were able to get past Bottas, they were able to show what they were truly about, and Bottas just wasn't quite there overall. And to look at the two overtakes specifically, I don't actually think he handled either particularly well. Firstly, the Hamilton one, of course, it is same machinery, which doesn't look great on the driver being overtaken. And ultimately, and this, to be honest, this shouldn't be specifically aimed at Bottas. This is actually aimed at the entire grid, because going down into turn one, I think everyone, quite naturally, because by default everyone just defends the inside line, it doesn't work at that first corner. And I'm not saying that it would absolutely definitely work to defend the outside into turn one, but surely it's worth a go, because once you go on the inside defensively there, you just have to... Martin Brundle made this point quite a few times. You have to slow down so much in order to make that corner and also not hit the car on your outside, that it just doesn't quite work. I'd like to have seen Bottas maybe try the outside, but I won't be too critical on him on that, because pretty much every driver defending did the same thing. But the one on Verstappen I want to focus on a bit more specifically, because it appeared as if the Red Bull could not compete with the Mercedes on the straight, which led me to the conclusion that the only way that Verstappen is going to get past is either A, get the undercut, or B, Bottas make a mistake. Arguably both happened. The mistake thing, it was cold tyres, so again I won't be too critical on that. But the actual move going down into turn 5, I think it is, I would love to have seen a Kimi Raikkonen-esque attempt at a cutback from Bottas. It seemed very, yeah, you've got it, mate. There's not much I'm going to do. You're never going to hang it around the outside of Verstappen, who's diving up the inside there. So you might as well, even if it doesn't work, try a switchback. I'd like to have seen more fight, really, from Bottas in both of the moves that were attempted on him. I don't think he was there on either of those overtakes. I don't think his pace was great once he was in fresh air. And I'm leading to the conclusion, I'm going to ask you both on this now, that this is very much Verstappen versus Hamilton. And whilst I can see Bottas picking up a win or two this season, I don't think it comes from out, just pace and pace alone. I think it would require something else to happen. And to be honest, that might include Perez as well. I think that one's a bit more of a TBC. But I do want to throw that question over to you. So, Harry, do you think that Verstappen and Hamilton are just going to run away with this championship, and any wins outside of those two guys are going to be from circumstances that aren't expected?
Yeah, I mean, I think I made that point earlier. I think if Bottas gets a win this year, it's not going to be on outright pace. It's going to be something's happened to Verstappen and Hamilton. So yeah, I think we kind of guessed that Verstappen and Hamilton, they would be the main two. I say hopes. I guess they were hopes that after Saturday, after qualifying, I was like, oh, let's throw a third person into this championship fight, because that'll be excellent. But going by today, I don't think it's going to happen. So yeah, I have to agree with you, Ben. I think it's going to be Hamilton versus Verstappen. It's like Schumacher, Hakkinen, Senna, Prost, that kind of thing, isn't it? That no one else is going to catch up to those two at the moment. So, yeah, sorry, Botty.
What do you reckon, Sam? Do you think that do you think there is a chance that 23 out of 23 could go to these two guys?
If reliability stays as strong as it has been for both of these teams, especially in Mercedes' case, reliability has always been a real strength of theirs. Red Bull need to improve it a little bit, but clearly have been. Then, yeah, I really do think that we could be trading race wins until the end of the season between Hamilton and Verstappen. I've said a few times now, I've already said it in this podcast once, I don't think Bottas wins again in his career. And if he does win again, that is simply because they've taken each other out. There's been a serious disaster with both of those teams at once. I don't think he can beat Hamilton and Verstappen together on the same field. He'd have to have one of them DNF and then one of them have some kind of problem for him to have a chance. And I think that says a lot about the demise of Bottas's form over the years. A couple of years ago, it felt like we were saying Bottas is a threat. Bottas is the chance. Bottas is the one that could come along and change something. Now he's a kind of a heavy doubt if he can even score one win on pace in a season. And I think when those doubts set in from fans of the sport like we are, that says a lot about maybe what the motorsport community are saying. Because if all three of us agree on that point, then, you know, we're all quite fair, I think, in our opinions. We have a joke and a laugh, but I like to think we base our opinions on realistic results, tried and tested formulas, we give it time. And that's showing now in Bottas' form. It's not good enough and it's not consistent enough. So, yeah, I don't think he wins again unless Hamilton and Verstappen both DNF. And he's got to combat Perez and possibly Norris. That McLaren still looks pacey, and Perez is improving with every single race, as we saw today. He was still well off it, but give it another 2 or 3 races, Perez could be there as well. And that is trouble for Bottas. So for now, Bottas doesn't win again unless absolute disaster strikes the top 2.
Yeah, I think Verstappen and Hamilton will walk away with this. I do think there are opportunities for Bottas and for Perez and maybe someone else to take a win or two. Just because specifically with Bottas, we know that he does have his specialist circuits in Russia, Austria specifically. So I think he could, get it together for one of those weekends. We know how good Valtteri Bottas is in qualifying. So if he's able to hook together a lap at, say, Monaco or a similar circuit where it's really difficult to overtake, then maybe that leads to a win. So I still think there are a few opportunities out there for Bottas, but it is going to be very difficult to take wins away from those top 2. And Bottas in the last couple of years, it's been up and down in terms of his form, but largely speaking, it hasn't mattered too much what his form has been because, particularly 2019 and 2020, they haven't really had a rival to challenge them. Now they're in a position where Bottas doesn't just need to be good for his own sake, he needs to be good for Mercedes' sake as well, because they have got Red Bull knocking on the door. And if he starts to turn in sort of P4 performances, as we say, he beat Perez today, which I guess is objective A ticked, but as Perez gets used to the car, is he going to come under threat regularly by him? He needs to perform for the sake of the team as well as himself.